Good evening. Welcome back to the Washington Outsider Report on the Coalition Radio. For those newly joining the program, my name is Irina Zuckerman, and I'm the editor-in-chief of the Washington Outsider. With us today is Alik Gomelsky. He's a historian, a researcher, an author of many articles, as well as books, two recent books on Ukraine, and we'll get into it a little bit. He's a consultant on issues related to Jewish history, and he's been a participant in many conferences and panels related to all these topics. Today, we'll be delving into an issue that has been relatively controversial for a variety of reasons. We'll be talking about his research and into both the historical context and the structure of the Gulag system in the Soviet Union, but just as importantly, the efforts to cover that up and to make it less of a priority in historical, political, social discussions of communism, of the Soviet Union, of authoritarianism and its impact. We'll be discussing all of that in depth. But first, Alik, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you here. Thank you for joining us. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got involved in studying history, and about your previous books?
Okay. Thank you for having me on today. I'm very glad to join and to discuss with you, Irina, these very important topics. My degree is not in history, it's related to analytics. And I've been researching history for over 30 years. I could say that I started this research as long as my foot stepped in Israeli land. It was I began to explore my Jewish identity, the one that was banned in the USSR, and I started looking at the history of our peoples and in connection with the entire world. And actually, this information didn't exist behind the Iron Curtain that I was living in. All my literature and all my work is not fiction. I have to underline it. It's based on the classified documents from KGB, CIA, NATO, FBI, Germany Bundesarchive, US Senate documents, OUN, and archives of Vladimir Bukovsky and Vasily Mitrokhin. But it's not just that. It's many other archives, memoirs, and other sources. I provide the independent reconstructions of the timelines that have been warped, convoluted, and fabricated for Soviet propaganda narratives and political agendas. The level of my work, to be honest with you, has attracted academics internationally, along with many others in various fields, because of its integrity, its format, content, and its focus on figures whose memory and life work against corruption has been slandered by Soviet narratives. Just now, I completed the manuscript for the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine. This is the monograph about Avram Shifrin, my personal hero. And I'm currently working on his personal archive. If you don't mind, I would like to share the picture of him so people will, if you can allow me to share the screen.
Yes, give me 1 second. I'm just trying to.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Make host. Okay. So now, as the host, you can share your screen.
Correct. And this is my screen. Okay. Okay. So Avram Shifrin on the left-hand side, Avram Shifrin standing, speaking. The books, his hands. I can even show the book that he's showing. We will talk later, this book. And the bottom right-hand side, he is standing left from the Golda Meir, Prime Minister of Israel. It's a very exciting figure, and in my mind, he's here. Okay, let me stop sharing so we can talk further. Yeah, so yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask you, how did you get to learn about that particular area about Schifrin and his work? After all, his name is not exactly the name that everyone is familiar with. Quite frankly, he in the West, he seems now at least quite obscure.
Yeah, it's funny story, but you see, behind every research there is some story. Behind the history there is story. I actually studied the person of Yaroslav Stetsko. Yaroslav Stetsko, he was deputy of Stepan Bandera, and he was the prime minister of the proclaimed Ukrainian state. And when I dig the archives about him, I found out that he is communicated with some Jewish person by name Avram Shifrin. So I was wondering, who is that?
That sounds very surprising, all things considered.
Yes, absolutely. Who is that, and why it's so important that he was communicating and correspondent on such high level? And then I started to dig about Avram Shifrin, and I found this amazing person. I agree with you, not much information about him, and by certain purpose. We can get later about why it's happened. He is absolutely person of the absolutely amazing personality and fearless, and the person who fought the Soviet Union because he considered Soviet Union as enemy, and Soviet Union openly in a document of KGB that I studied about Shifrin, they proclaimed him enemy number one of the Soviet Union. You can imagine. Yeah. That's how I get to the Avram Shifrin.
So the surprising part about what you mentioned is both Stetsko and Bandera and all of these Ukrainian liberation movement figures are considered to be very anti-Semitic, and and this image is so pervasive that there have been demonstrations in the United States and episodes of outrage over the Ukrainian government honoring these people, including actually under President Zelensky. Could you explain to me how it came to pass that somebody like Shifrin ended up in contact like someone Stetsko, and what is it about this narrative? Because it doesn't seem to add up.
Yeah, I understand. You know what? Let me start to share another screen. It's pretty amazing story, an amazing picture. Because it comes to the document, I just slide it down because I prepare many of them. But I jumped a little bit. You know what you see in your screen right now? It's the KGB document. It's the leaflets that's created. As you can see on the right-hand side, it's Hebrew, and left-hand side, it's Yiddish. So it's the pamphlet or proclamation or leaflets, you can call it like that, and it has been created in KGB and has been submitted to the Jewish organizations, newspapers, journals, magazines, community gathering, whatever clubs, showing up and what it's saying, because on the document on the right-hand side is the translation into Russian, because it's the part of the document that I had found in KGB. And they openly, because it's top secret document, they openly talking to each other. Actually, it's KGB. I believe it was header of the KGB Ukraine. It was reporting to the Volodymyr Sherbetsky, he was the head of the Communist Party of Ukraine, and he actually, the KGB guy, reported to him that such pamphlet has been created, distributed by only one purpose: to force Jewish people, considering status quo like enemy, like killers of Jewish populations, like organizers of the pogroms and participant in Shoah. And I said in my books that I consider the Hebrew language was particularly specified and created for Mossad, because Mossad, as you know, has been captured and brought to.
You froze.
State school is also enemy.
Wait, if you could just repeat your last couple of sentences, you froze for a moment.
Okay. The KGB created the Hebrew version to convince Mossad that state school is enemy of Jewish people, and Mossad has to terminate him, or let's say captured him and brought to justice in Israel, like it has been done for Adolf Eichmann. Not long time before, because this document dated 1969. That's why they try to convince, and they continue to convince, because many KGB created lots of the fake documents. This is really fake because it was created in the name of the Jewish people who is living in Germany, like they created this pamphlet, but it has been done by KGB. Yeah. So Stetsko is not anti-Semite. He is not the killer, and he tried to work together with Jewish people like Avram Shifrin. I believe I can show the next slide.
Yes.
You will be amazed, because it's the Igeret Tavir, so-called. It's small letter. It's fast letter. I used to use it in Israel when I lived. It's fast letter, and Shifrin, cheap, fast, and easy letter to create and send. And you can see the address of the Yaroslav State School in Munich. And if you can see, I know it's a little bit hard, but it's this research center of Avram Shifrin that he created in Israel. So they have communication, and they have common grounds to fight against Soviet Union, a fight against the Gulag country. Yeah. I can, the same story for Bandera, because he is also blamed for anti-Semitism, but he has nothing against the Jews who support Ukraine. Because for Ukrainian nationalists, it was enemy anyone who is not, who is fighting against independence of Ukraine. It doesn't matter which nationality, it was this person. Ukrainian, Jewish, Russian, Polish, doesn't matter. They fought, because they fought for independence of Ukraine. Yeah.
So what we're observing is one of the prime examples of smear and character assassination campaigns that, that have been completely forgotten by history. Some of the Soviet campaigns of that sort have been unearthed, and we have seen how they've tried to attack particular figures on a very personal basis, just to discredit them. But this is one that has been buried so deep that it's continuing to feed fake narratives to this day.
Yeah, most important, sorry to interrupt you. That's why KGB assassinated Bandera. They assassinated one of the prominent leaders of OUN, also Lev Rebet, 2 years before the Bandera. But they don't don't try to eliminate or assassinate Stetsko, because Stetsko was prominent figure of the not just Ukrainian movement for independence, but also international anti-communist league. It was actually, it's called Anti-Bolshevik Bloc of Nations. It was anti-communistic organization that Stetsko has headed for 40 years, from 1946 up to his death in 1986. Yeah, so that's why KGB tried to convince Israeli Mossad to assassinate Stetsko, not by themselves, because they don't want to mess up for this.
And is there any information on why Mossad ultimately did not engage?
For me, I don't have it. This information. We can try to dig Israeli archives to find it, but definitely they have these documents, this pamphlet that I showed in a previous slide, but it's not convinced them, because exactly the Stetsko has been arrested in July 9, 1941, and he was under arrest in Nazi prisons and concentration camps until the end of 1944. November 1944. That's why he has, even he wants to do something, he has no possibility. But again, I repeat, Stetsko has nothing in his character of anti-Semitic nature. Even more, his wife, Slava Stetsko, she remembered that in UPA, in partisan army, she trained Jewish doctors how to use the machine gun, and they trained her how to help wounded soldiers. So it was so much communication. And Slava Stetsko, she insisted to come when she came back after the Soviet Union fell apart, and she came to the free Ukraine. She insisted to come to synagogue and met particularly my personal friend, Rabbi Azman, the chief rabbi of Ukraine right now. And that time he was rabbi of Kiev, and they meet and they chat for a couple of hours. It was amazing conversation. Yeah.
Wow, that is indeed quite crazy. So we know that there was this plot to discredit these figures, and Shifrin's very presence undermines that narrative. So once you latched on to that name and tried to find out who that was playing a role in this broader story, what did you discover? How did you get to his work?
I discovered him and his book, Fourth Dimension. It's actually, I can show, actually, I have slide of his book. It's very amazing book. It's in Russian, and imagine it has been translated by Ukrainians into Ukrainian language. And there is right now we have the Fourth Dimension in Russian and Ukrainian. But now I possess the translation into English in my short plans to publish this book, because it's a very important book. And in my point of view, it's one of the key documents about the Gulag. It's interesting, we will come to this question about the description of Gulag and evidence about Gulag. But Shifrin's was one of the important ones, and one of the interesting ones, because he was kind of inside, because it's amazing enough, but Shifrin mentioned that he was in prison in Gulag for 10 years, and he said that for the chapter 58, for the code 58, it's called the giving up the fatherland in Soviet Union. He was probably the only one it was many people sitting in Gulag, but he probably was the one who was sitting by for real stuff, for real traitors, because he was enemy of Soviet Union from very beginning of his life. At the age 17, when he went to the front, he was drafted in the army, and he immediately went to the penal battalions, Strafbat, so-called, because he was the son of the enemy of the state. And because of that, he, at age 17, he became enemy of the state in this penal unit. He fought and he ended up the army, the Soviet army, at the end of the war. He was ended up the major in a rank of major. So he was merely 22, and he ended up major rank, wounded, and he, for me, it was amazing because before that, I thought the youngest major in the history was Francisco Franco at the age of 23, but it's not. It was Abraham Shifrin at the age of 21, because technically he was not turned the 22. So after that, I read this book. I started to study, I started to dig. I found, to my amaze, I have found, and I had lots of conversation with his widow, Eleonora Poltinikov-Shifrin. Eleonora very known among Jews in United States because she did amazing job. He coming to United States, and she organizing support for victims of the terror attacks in Israel and also wounded Israeli soldiers. And she is by personality, she was amazing person, and I had a conversation with her until her last days in August 2021. And she shared with me lots of the information about Abraham, and that's how we decided that if something happened to her, the archive of Abraham Shifrin will be organized and shipped to Toronto. And because she knows that I have communications with Ukrainian diaspora here, with Jewish diaspora too, with museums and other institutions to store the archive, and because it should be studied, the archive should be studied. And it's absolutely amazing collection of the papers, letters, photographs, even documentaries, and many other things.
So how is it that everyone has heard of Solzhenitsyn and the Gulag Archipelago, but the fourth dimension has not even been translated to English up until now? And why is this witness of these horrific realities and atrocities has not been honored the same way Solzhenitsyn has been? Why hasn't he become equally a symbol of this anti-Soviet activity?
Mm-hmm. I would start not even from Abraham Shifrin, but from Ivan Solonevich. He was imprisoned in Gulag, but he was lucky to escape, and he wrote the amazing book in 1935. I believe it's called Russia in the Concentration Camp. After that, it was an amazing book by Julius Margolin. Julius Margolin, he is Polish Jew, and he wrote the book, The Journey to the Land of Zeka. It was original in Russian, and it's called Путешествие в страну Зека. It has been written back in 1946 to 1947 because Margolin was sitting in Gulag between 1939 to 1945. He was released in 1945, so he spent 6 years at Gulag. It's also an amazing person. After that, it was Varlam Shalamov who wrote his book in 1966. And only after that, we see almost simultaneously Avram Shifrin and Solzhenitsyn. An important point that besides the Solzhenitsyn, all others, were non-fiction books. I mean, Solonevich, Margolin, Shalamov, and Shifrin, they wrote non-fiction books. But Solzhenitsyn wrote some kind of fiction book. From my point of view, Solzhenitsyn did the probably good job, but he was not the first one who talked about the Gulag. So, for example, Margolin wrote his book when Solzhenitsyn was still in Gulag. Why it's not became? Because this truth about Gulag was killing them. I mean, they killing the people in the West. Those people who support the Soviet Union was Stalinist. About the Margolin, I would show you amazing book that I found in the archives. Where is it? Oh, it's here. Besides the journey to the land of the Zaka, we can see this amazing book. It's rare book that I found in the archive of Avram Shifrin, and it's called Paris Report, and it's about the process, or let's say trial of David Rousset against the communist defammators. It's interesting thing because, for example, the story that Viktor Kravchenko, the escaper to the West from the Soviet Union, who was had the trial against the French newspaper La Lettre Française back in 1949. It's sometimes considered like the trial of the century. But this trial, David Rousset, is more known. But to be honest with you, it's more important because the evidence and the people who supported, who give the evidences, amazing people, and many people who were in Gulag, they gave the information about it. It's how it's happened and what it's happened there. It's a terrible situation. Like it's not like some non-fiction writings by Solzhenitsyn, but true. Even one witness who testified in this trial against the communists. Actually, it's interesting. Sorry, I jump, but Rousset by himself, he also was communist, but he was not Stalinist, and he was against any concentration camps, Nazis or Soviets or someone else. That's why he fought, and he said about Gulag. And more left communists, let's say, they said that Rousset liar, and he falsified the information. That's why he brought lots of witnesses. And one of the witnesses, amazing witnesses that talk about in this report and this amazing brochure, is one of the Red Spain generals, Campesino. He was fearless, and he fought the Frankists in Spain in Civil War, 1936 to 1939. After the defeat, he went to Soviet Union, and he said he thought that he will get the good life, but not. He ended up in Gulag, and he spent a few years. After second try, he was escaped after he was actually after Gulag, he was on a he was living in the Azul, but he was escaping, and he through the Turkey he came to France and he testified in this trial. So it's amazing. It's the true story how the terrible situation in Gulag has been denied and has been hidden, and all the people who say in truth about Gulag became for the West, like East, left on the West became the traitors and enemies. That's why they torpedoing all the investigation and all the analysis of Gulag. That's why it was problem for Margolin by himself publish his book, because no one want to publish, neither in Israel, where he returned to, or in Europe. He was luckily to publish it in United States. But it was published in Russian. That's why it was not so popular. So because it was long time. So this book has been published like 15 years before the Solzhenitsyn. And unfortunately, it's still not this book. I mean, the Journey to the Land of the Zeka was not unknown, but we have to dig it up and teach people about.
This is all quite shocking because I've never heard of any of these people, and much less this challenge to the Soviet Gulag system from inside. All these characters have been entirely written out of the history, out of the narrative, out of everything. And the perception that anyone studying the Soviet Union today might get is that everything was met with no resistance and it was a very monolith system, whereas apparently there was plenty of fractions and disagreements around all these points.
Yeah.
But that still does not fully answer the question why Solzhenitsyn at this latest date became so well known and attracted attention. Was it only because his work was fiction, or was there something else that made him compelling to the West as opposed to everyone else? And why didn't the Soviet system go to the same lengths to suppress them with similar success as his predecessors?
It's very interesting questions. I'm maybe too not too objective. I'm subjective, but the Solzhenitsyn books, 200 years together, it's assaulting me like a Jew, and his imperialistic views also insulting me. Another point, by digging and pulling up KGB documents about Shifrin, I found evidence that back in 1974, when Shifrin's book translated into Ukrainian and published on the West in Munich, too, also Ukrainian nationalists, they said in their conversation, and it has been leaked to Moscow, to KGB, that Ukrainians considered Solzhenitsyn like imperialistic person, and he has nothing to do with the freedom, because he omitted any and didn't mention any fight of Ukraine for the independence, along with the Holodomor and other sacrifices has been made by Ukrainians. So for them, picture very clear that Solzhenitsyn not the fighter, but he's some kind of helper of Soviet Union. Too many, I don't have evidence, I would not say anything, but for me, it's too many questions about Solzhenitsyn. Plus, for me, I don't know if you ever read books of Vladimir Voinovich,
Yes.
Moscow 2042,
Sure.
and portrait on a I don't recall how it's called in English, Portrait на фоне мифа. It's about the Solzhenitsyn, and it's absolutely amazing. And he knew Solzhenitsyn in person, And many other people, I saw there lots of criticizing from the Jewish side, from Ukrainian side, from Russian side as well, because they don't see Solzhenitsyn true fighter for the freedom and destroying the imperialistic Russia. And it's became, after he returned to Russia, it has been clear that he is just another imperialistic person. He is not the fighter for the freedom.
Some of his ideas seem very similar to Dugin, who is not well known to average people, but who is ideologically very much an imperialist, who has reflected Putin's vision very well.
Absolutely.
I don't know whether he inspired him or merely was a convenient mouthpiece, but I don't know what that relationship is exactly, but that there is a similarity is definitely there.
Yes.
So interestingly, so you found out all this information. You realized that there is a lot there that hasn't seen the light of day. Now, so Schifrin, at one point in his life, after going through all those horrible experiences, decided to document whatever he could, and he produced this. He produced his writings. He started working on an archive of the Gulag experiences. Now, interestingly enough, because Solzhenitsyn wrote fiction, leaving aside his personal ideology, that fiction could not be all that helpful because it is fiction. At the end of the day, the names are changed, the dates are changed. So its value is more as just connecting complete outsiders to what's going on and raising awareness, not in providing historical documentary value. So let's talk about this historical documentary value of Schifrin's archive. What is the story behind it, and how is he the one who came up with the idea of doing that?
Schifrin, in his archive, a big part of this archive, it's like you said exactly, it's work about the Gulag. Here on a screen, we can see actually it's speech or like a testimony of Schifrin that he provided. On the left and the right hand side, we can see it was declassified by CIA document, and it's actually has been done in the hearing back in February 1973. And information coming from Schifrin, it was so amazing, it was so shocking that people can believe and can trust, because they trust if Tоварищ Khrushchev saying that there is no political prisoners in Soviet Union, so it's maybe like that. But the truth that Schifrin, because he gave the evidence like a victim and like a person who was spent 10 years and saw by his own eyes what happened to people, to inmates, and what the situation over there. It was amazed, and some people he understand that some people can even trust him. And so he decided to do some unusual stuff, to make documentary hidden camera in Soviet Union, in the prisons, in camps, and special psych prisons that can provide the material evidence to the West that such horror exists, like hell. Like you said in the title of this video, it's hell, and it's really hell. Before I come into the movie, I will show you. This is the map of Soviet Union. It's black dots. It's like black holes. It's prisons, it's psycho prisons, and it's camps, of course, in Soviet Union. It's for me, it's like a black holes where people just disappearing, becoming the dust and disappearing forever. And that's why Schifrin it's for. So returning back to the documentary, Shifrin passed like underground. It was contraband. He provided the small camera, mini camera, and people, his friends, made the documentary, Hidden Camera in Gulag. And this is most important, that these films has been passage back to the West, and Shifrin combined documentary and call it Prison Land. Prison Land, it's another hidden gem, I would tell you, because it's absolutely undeniable evidence about the Soviet Union prison system, and it was very popular and it's very known back in 1970s. But now, guess who knows about it? Just a few people knew. Even the people who knew Shifrin, they don't know that this documentary exists. And this documentary does exist. The association that I am founder and president right now, have this movie, and we're preparing to do or to show this movie to this documentary. It's not the movie, it's documentary to the world, because it's very important. And nothing, most important, that it nothing changed. The horrors that happened in occupied Ukraine, part of Ukraine, is absolutely the same, maybe even worse than it was in Gulag, because it was some communist party. Now there is no communist party, it's Putin by himself. So they do what they want, and it's even terrible, but still, it's the same Soviet Union. One more thing I would like to show you. It's amazing. I didn't show before. It's amazing picture. You see the picture, and you probably can read what
Yes.
on what's written.
It's a
Yes.
It's a meat
Yes.
transportation truck.
Yeah, it's not the meat. It's what Shifrin did. They bought this old minivan and created kind of Voronok of it. And the senators and congressmen of United States, they do some travels for once, of course, like a kind of prisoners. It's the way how prisoners has been transported in Soviet Union. You can see
incredible.
It was attraction.
That's incredible. So
absolutely, because yeah.
Well, there's nothing like a direct experience of something to really understand that. So
because it's really how it has been transported, and such bread or meat and this kind of events, they transported prisoners from one prison to another, or to the train to transfer to camp or to another city. Yeah.
So here's I have many questions based on what you said, but I'll start with the most obvious one, which is that, you know, as you showed me the map, I was struck by the sheer quantity of these camps. They are significantly more than I could have possibly imagined. So first of all, how did the Soviet Union manage to build up so many camps? I mean, that's a lot. That's a huge number of prisons and camps and psych wards. How did they manage to create this network that turned the entire country into a massive concentration camp or labor camp or whatever you want to call it? And how did they manage to do that without attracting outside attention? I mean, even if they kept everyone quiet, even though they didn't have internet, I understand all of that. Nevertheless, when you're building as much as they had to create all of this, wouldn't something get around somewhere somehow? How did it all come unnoticed? And the second part of the question, how did Shifrin get all that information? How did he manage to accomplish the actual mapping?
It's an interesting question. Map, of course, has been built by him, but he has the information because his friends who passing the information to him, and I start from a little bit from far, because Shifrin did another amazing job. You probably never heard about it. He created, he prepared, let's say, some interesting minivan with the hidden spaces where he hid anti-Soviet, anti-communist, and Ukrainian nationalist materials, and also some Zionist as well, because it's very important for him. And he smuggled these materials to Soviet Union. The minivan that he created, 5 years, 2 times per year, went to Soviet Union and brought these illegal materials, literature, and movies. It was some movies, of course, because Zionist movie, yes, about Israel and other points to the Soviet Union, because it was people who don't want to live in this prison of the nations. It's how I call the Soviet Union. That's how he get the help and how he gets support. He has lots of correspondence and archive. You can find lots of the correspondence, letters, photographs. Actually, it's one, for example, I can show you. This is the photograph. I had no time to scan it, but it's from prison. Like you see, it's a Carthage prison. And other people, whoever not support by open heart, you can write always some. And you can see how you can make the picture with the photo camera inside the prison. If you bribe someone from the guards. And I remember one, I don't recall who it was, and some poet, he mentioned that half country is sitting, which is in prison, and half of them just guards. It happened like that. Of course, it's not 50-50, just exaggerating, but still, it's lots of people. Like you see now in Ukraine, they just meet at like a cannon meats that has been used in the front. It's always was, and it's always you can find the people who guard innocent people, or just kill innocent people, or torture them. It's always you can find in every country, but as we can see in this map, in Soviet Union in particular. Another amazing comparing has been made by Avram Shifrin. He said, how many concentration camps we know in Germany, in Nazi Germany? Like 400? Like 40? Maybe 45? And you can see here how many. And which country is more dangerous? It's more cruel and more bloody. Answer is easy. Soviet Union, of course, because Soviet Union has been created Gulag system not in 1933. Or okay, Hitler came to the power 1933, but I don't think he next year or next month he created the first concentration camps. But still, it's maximum 12 years. And for how many years Gulag system has been functioning in Soviet Union? 70? And how many people? Another point I always asking, if we combine the number of victims of Soviet system and Red China system, how many hundreds of millions of lives became the dust? How many? And we have to know about, and we have to teach others about.
But getting back to the first part of my question, how did the Soviets manage to cover all this up when you yourself just used the example of that picture that was taken as a after somebody probably bribed the guard? If there was due to absolute corruption and just the sheer size of the system, there were obvious leaks at least internally? How did any of not any of that not make it outside?
Because people don't want to trust. It's like with the some of them they just torpedoing any tries to give the truth, inconvenient truth, but some don't trust. It can be the Soviet Union is the free country. It's the more is the country of the people, a country of the proletariat. There is no imperialistic over there, but the truth is different. So they cover, and the whole system worked in Soviet Union to cover everything, to fake, and to blame others for all sins. It's also common for them. So they cover, they bribe. I mean, they bribe not the guard, but bribe the politicians on the West, of course. Some of them bribe, and another amazing source, if we're talking about Bukovsky, his archive is amazing because he also showing up how Soviet Union financially supported communist parties in all over the world, and how many money they transferred and what they did, because it's another amazing source, and it's open. Everybody can look at this archive, but guess how many? Because lots of people intentionally white out and the whitewash the Soviet Union and Soviet system by purpose, because they try to blame all the sins of Soviet Union on others, like Ukrainian, for example, the Bandera, the Stitsko, Shukhevich, and others. But they forgot that first collaboration with the Nazi has been done by Soviet Union back in 1939, and they support them. And who divided Poland? Who actually executed? Do you know that among the Polish officers has been executed in Katyn, and my native Kharkiv was a few hundreds of Jews.
Oh, you're from Kharkiv? So am I.
Sorry?
I'm also from there, from Kharkiv.
Wow, wow, how
Not only
amazing.
that, but
Yeah,
I was actually just traveling through Poland in September. So thanks to visits to museum, I finally learned about that connection and how Kharkiv was one of the sites inexplicably that was used for these things. I'm not sure how they
lesser part.
chose that particular location, by the way. That I don't understand.
For me, it's hard to say why, but Kharkiv was one of the points for them, and I know another important part because it was East Ukraine, and East Ukraine was always Soviet rules, and not no, I think in beginning from 1917 they more under Soviets for a long time, and then more influenced and more wiped out from any uh, people who fight against the Soviets, who fight for the freedom. That's the problem. Why? It's hard to say, but the chief rabbi of Polish army has been executed in Katyn, and one of the highest ranking Jews in Polish army, the I do colonel, lieutenant colonel Maximilian Landau has been executed in Kharkiv, and Maximilian Landau, he was chief of the artillery in defending Lviv in September 1939. From the combined attacks from one side, from Russia, from Soviets, and from Nazis, and he has been captured and executed in Kharkiv.
Yep. Unbelievable. This is crazy. You would think that after all the atrocities done to the Jews, that the discreditation of the Soviet Union, the entire system, would have been a top priority for the Jewish communities around the world. But it's said exactly the opposite.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's one of things that upsetting me a lot. That it should be clear. Even one of the chapters in my book, I specified and I combine all the atrocities, like most known and most vigorous atrocities that has been done by Soviets to especially Jews. And that's why it's interesting thing. Sorry, I jump because it's come to my mind that the papers about the case about Shafrin, most point was that he is Zionist and he tried to convince other Jews of Soviet Union became the patriots of the Israel and Jewish nation. That's the even worse sin than giving the secrets to the Americans that he really did.
That whole situation is quite crazy. But what's even crazier that all of this once it finally saw the light of day, and it actually made it into the official U.S. record. So how did that happen? How did Schifrin, despite his all these efforts to kind of underplay his role, understandably so, compared to more sympathetic Soviet-approved dissidents like Solzhenitsyn, how did he manage to have the impact that he had, and how did he manage to get that story out to attract U.S. attention, and why do we not know anything about it now? I mean, it's all official. We've seen the pictures. He was doing these very impactful things like driving senators around pretending to be prisoners. Why has that been completely wiped off from official memory, or so it seems?
Problem that West, and I always repeating that West don't want to fight in the war. We can say that it's weakness, but it's also strength, because normal people don't want to die, don't want to make a war. They won't make peace. But you have to always understand your enemy and your opposite side, and understand with whom you can talk, with whom you can make deal, and with whom you can't. Because I always say that in a life there is compromise that better not make it, better not to do this compromise. And it has been done. Actually, it was a person and by a U.S. government, and especially Nixon and Kissinger, those two guys, sweet pigs, who tried to convince Israeli government that not to fight openly, not to fight the Soviet Union and free Jews from Soviet Union. And they tried to torpedo the Jackson-Vanik law. Not the Soviets, but first they're inside, because they try to convince that it's stupid and nobody support. And the government of the United States was able to convince Israel not to support this one. But actually, even Soviets, they saying that if Jackson-Vanik amendment would be applied fully and legally, it will be destroying the Soviet Union. And it's actually what has to be done. And it's actually what has been done now, because you have to finish enemy, and there is enemy that you can trust. And actually, it's not saying by me, it's saying by Bukovsky. And Vladimir Bukovsky said, you can't trust to any KGB officer at all. So for them, you either enemy and they will kill you, or try to kill, or another kind, you're working for them. There is no middle, or working for them or working against them. And so you can't trust the KGB. And like we see this officer of KGB, like a new Russian Tsar, and he actually said there is no such nonsense like a former KGB officer. he said by himself. I mean, so you have to listen to what your enemies say and understand. It's very important. But Shifrin was don't like the compromise and always fight. Even he alone, but he never was alone. There is always some people who help him. If he alone, he fought, and he was in such situation in a war, in a prison before, because actually when he was convinced, he got the death sentence, but by God help, he was saved from this one. It's another story, just for another meeting, probably. So he was not executed. He got 25 years in camps, but it's ended up just 10 years. He was also lucky. And then he was just thrown out from the Soviet Union back 1970, because the KGB, I think that if they thrown out all the leaders of the Zionist movement would stop. But it was a big mistake, and that's what your friend said. Because when they thrown out the most active people, active Jews, the Jews in Soviet Union understand. If I will be active, I will be also thrown out of Israel or for another country. It was a big mistake. I know they smart, but every smart always doing some stupid stuff, stupid mistake. And that's what happened to KGB in the case of the Abraham Shifrin. He was enemy, and he was enemy of the Soviet Union. And he tried to convince everybody that you can't trust Soviet Union. You have to fight. Otherwise, they will kill you.
So the craziest thing is just what parallels I see between that history of the Soviet Union and the continuity, I would say, not even parallels, with Russia's actions in Ukraine and elsewhere around the world today. Just as an example, Russia somehow managed to smuggle over 400,000 people from Ukraine into somewhere in Russia. We don't know what happened to those people. And to this day, I don't understand how, over the course of months of the war, they managed to get so many people out of the country without anyone knowing how it happened, where it was, having any photographs of the mass movement or entry points, exit points. That to me is as mysterious and mystifying as the cover-up of this massive system of imprisonment.
For me, it's hard to say because I'm not the expert in this question, but they have a good experience in that. Like, if you look back to the history, how they deported nations. I mean, the Chechens and in English, they deported nations, and then Tatars and others, Kalmyks, they deported. They know how to do it. About the Gulag, there is two stories that has been also that related to Gulag, that it was involved Shifrin. It's disappearing Raoul Wallenberg after the Second World War, and also mysterious disappearance, or because Shifrin spent 9 years to investigate the Boeing that has been shut down in September 1st, 1983 in the Far East. It was not actually shut down, kill all the people. So Shifrin, after investigation, and he has the this idea that if everybody was wiped out, that all the passengers, maybe a few has been killed or injured, but all of them disappear in Gulag, including the very interesting person, McDonald, Larry McDonald, Lawrence Patton McDonald. Is the very interesting person. I don't know how you, if you know the case, if you know the Larry McDonald, but Larry McDonald, being the Democratic member of the Democratic Party of the United States, he planned to switch to the to the big enemy, the Republican Party, and then became the next president of United States of the second term of Ronald Reagan. Because he was sure that Ronald Reagan will be going for another term, but he plans after the 1988. So it's too convenient disappearance of the person. Why I'm talking about Larry McDonald? Because Larry McDonald was one of the strongest anti-communists in the world, and he was member of the World Anti-Communist League, and he fought the Soviet Union. Being congressman, I believe he is author of, if I'm not mistaken, about 50 laws that anti-Soviets and anti-communist laws that has been pushed in legislations. And it's very important. So it was clearly enemy of Soviet Union. And suddenly he disappeared. He was not killed in the crash because it was not crash. It's Abraham Shifrin spent 9 years investigating this one, this case, but unfortunately nobody trusts him. And after that, because he was one of the first who said that the black boxes that usually I'm talking about the aircraft black box, because Soviets from the very beginning saying that black box lost. But Shifrin, through his channels, through his investigation, said that black boxes was not disappeared, and Russians have them. And if they have them, they definitely will forge them, temper them, and then probably provide. And that's what happened in back 1992 when Yeltsin provided these black boxes. But remember, first they said that they don't have. Could you trust? No.
And what
No.
about the Wallenberg situation? How did he?
Wallenberg, because Shifrin, when Shifrin, one of the important part of his testimony in front of Senate committee, that he mentioned that in Gulag, when he was there between 53 and 63, was many foreign citizens, Americans, French, German, Spanish, other citizens, many Belgian citizens and other citizens, prisoners of war who was captured and who was held in prison, held in the camps. So he, through the conversation with other inmates, he understands that there is Wrangel Island in the far north, where Soviets captured and keeping the most important prisoners. So he, Shofrin, get the evidence that among them, among very important prisoners, was also Raoul Wallenberg as well. So after the cascades of lights, because Soviets say after he was dead soon after captured, then after he died in 50s, so it's all kinds of lies. But Shifrin was assured, or maybe just he had the opinion, let's say, that Raoul Wallenberg was held in prison till 1970s or 1980s, and he disappeared because Gulag is huge country. It's not even an archipelago. It's big part of the land, and it's another land. It's prison land, like he said. The person disappearing without trace, and it's easy to disappear. It's the empire. It's another empire.
And since then, no one has come forward with testimonies. I mean, if he was in prison, he was in prison with other people. And after all of
Yeah.
that, was over, I'm surprised that more people come forward to tell stories about what they knew, what they saw.
You know what? There is old principle that dead people is not talking. It's what they do, and it's always was. There is, like Stalin said, there is person, there is problem. No person, no problem. That's what they try. That what some people fear, some people disappear, some people don't care. So not everybody is talking, but who was and who talking, it's one of them is Shafri. And also, like I said, about other people who provided evidence about the imprisonment.
So let's getting back to Shippen's story. He's in the US. He manages to give this testimony, but eventually Nixon and the others are looking to suppress all of that information, or to not, at least not to downplay it and not get involved too much with the Soviet Union to avoid confrontation and conflict. Then comes Ronald Reagan, who is the number one anti-Soviet figure in the United States. So
Yeah.
sounds to me like you are skeptical about that. Tell me, what was it that Reagan should have done that he didn't?
You see, for me, it's hard to say. I'm not the politicians. I'm not inside the kitchen to tell how cook is cooking his
Sure.
meals. But I would tell you that from the very beginning, Reagan was not so anti-communistic. He became more stronger after he learned lots of things. And don't forget that from 1982 till 1982, the Soviet Union has been ruled by Brezhnev, or maybe who was around, but Brezhnev was the head
Right.
of the Soviet Union. But from 1982 to 1984, the head of the Soviet Union were KGB guy. And one of the teachers of Putin is Andropov.
Mm-hmm.
He is a dangerous person. And that's maybe because of that, Reagan started to move more far, or more right, let's say, not far, but more right. But around them, don't forget, because in Soviet Union, there were many agents of influence. I'll show you a picture of one of the person who actually was part of the administration of Reagan. I don't think you know this person. Did you ever see? No.
No.
It's Herbert Romerstein. He is actually head of the contra propaganda institution in the United States, and he was a member of the Ronald Reagan, let's say, pool or command, and he fought the Soviet Union propaganda and Soviet Union, and he always said that there was lots of the agent on influence and agents of Soviet Union in United States and other countries. And he actually wrote amazing article back in 2004 after study archives of KGB. He came to Kiev. He was retiring from the politics, and then he worked for the some institution that doing some analysis and systematic works. So he came to to Ukraine and studied the archive. In 2004, he wrote amazing article that called "Divide and Conquer," and was exactly about the KGB work to divide Ukrainians, Jews, Lithuanians, and other nations. Because the fake that we're talking about Yaroslav Stetsko, Stepan Bandera, and others, it was spread out by Soviet Union by purpose, because they don't want that Ukrainians, nationalists, and Jewish Zionists combine it and work together against the Soviet Union. It's what has been done, and it has been done by purpose. And it started from the beginning. And by beginning, I call its execution or assassination of Simon Petlura in Paris back in 1926. I convinced that the person who killed him has nothing to do with Jewishness or defending the Jewish people, because Petlura was not the person who killed the Jews, or even ordered to kill the Jews, or even was silent when killing the Jews, because I think you understand how when I said how has been called Petlura, and he has been called Żydівський батько in Ukraine. I believe you understand.
Yeah,
this one.
perfectly fine.
Yeah, Jewish daddy.
Mhm.
He was called Jewish daddy because he was defending the Jews and who helped the Jews. And it's the person who actually looking forward to get Jews and Ukrainians work together, live together, and succeed together. And for the purpose to eliminate him has been found Schwarzbard. Who's the Schwarzbard? He's anarchist, communist, expropriator, because he was expropriated in 1908, 1909. He expropriated some businesses, like stealing money and do the criminal activities just to steal the money from them. So it's the person who has nothing to do with Jewish law, with Jewish tradition, and with the Jewish God. And who is he who has killed the Petlura, who support the Jews and who wants to help the Jews? And actually, Petlura, it's interesting. Now we living in a very hard time about Israel. Petlura, back in 1922, when Great Britain get the mandate for Palestine, Petlura praised it and sent the greetings to the Minister of Jewish Affairs of Ukrainian People Republic, praising that Jews finally get the opportunity, or at least will have the opportunity to create their own independent state. And it has been done back in 1922. And who is Schwarzbard? The person who visited Soviet Union back in 1936. Can you imagine that anarchist in 1936 will travel to Soviet Union and stayed in Odessa openly in a very expensive hotel? 1936. Can you imagine? Can you trust that these people has no ties with the Soviet Union? He is the enemy by all means, because who cares about the Petlura? Because he is Jew, he is anarchist, he is a traitor who betrayed the Soviet Union and who went back to Paris, and he's imperialist bourgeois. But he went to Odessa, he spent the time, and he left Odessa very freely. But most important, that when anarchists who were underground in Odessa back in 1936, when they knew that, oh, this prominent person came to Odessa, they went to meet him. And guess what? Soon after, all of them has been executed, found, arrested, and executed. Guess what? Nice picture.
That's shocking. And all of that deserves a movie, books, complete, this full treatment, because this shocking information, you don't even understand how many American Jews I know who have a completely wrong conception about Ukraine, about the basic history, who believe
Yeah.
all that disinformation. And quite frankly, even I, listening to you, have a hard time understanding how successful, to what extent you can smear somebody, that the history gives a completely wrong image. But I shouldn't be surprised, because in contemporary times I've noted such campaigns myself and have written extensively about them in various contexts. So I guess I should not be surprised that, before, when you have entire state apparatus working towards that goal, you can accomplish the same thing. Because I look at the contemporary matters, the fact that history can be just as suppressed is shocking to me. And I fear that in the future it will be the same way. If you don't undo the damage done by disinformation agents, they
We
can
have to
destroy people's good names forever.
we have to fight. When you mention about the United States, I will show you some interesting document about Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Nice document, yeah? Because KGB document on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, it's the map of our province of Manitoba.
Mm.
If you can see down, Winnipeg is the capital of the Manitoba. So what its letter saying? This is the document of KGB that's saying that forged letter created by handwritings by one of the Banderites has been sent to the office to the Prime Minister of Canada that time, because it was back in 1969, 1970, to Pierre Trudeau. And in this letter, with this picture, because it's exactly this picture has been sent, this pamphlet has been sent to the Trudeau, saying that Ukrainians demand independence, let's say chief of Canada, the province of Manitoba, independence. If you looking back in 1970, what it was lots of problems in Quebec, because Quebec, Front Liberation Quebec tried to chip off Quebec from Canada. So it was found very nice time to send this forged document. So it's how they work. It's how they're working now. Nothing changed. Only the name of the organization changed, but the principles, the targets, and the destinations are the same. Rule the world. It's what they want. Look now who's supporting them, actually. Who's supporting and who now in the streets support the terror against Israel. Guess who? Left-wing party. Left-wing, far left, whatever. Yeah.
That's not surprising.
Absolutely. I want to see. Yeah, about this document, this is actually from the research center that has been founded by Shifrin, and it's exactly about first in a world documentary colored film about the Soviets polit prisoners, camps, prisons, and psych prisons and other stuff. It's very interesting, and it has been created like a narrative, or let's say description of the movie, of the documentary. Sorry, it's in film, but it's what else I wanna show you? Yeah, I believe I showed all the picture. Yeah, it's the actually association that I found, and it's interesting that in this association we have now about above 60 members, which is prominent historians, political scientists, journalists, artists, religious leaders, and also civic rights activists. And not single, but major target, we're looking to fight the disinformation and fakes that Soviets, Russians, and others try to spread. because we have to educate. Unless you educate and knew the history, you can fight. And I always say that history is yesterday's politics. So if you don't know history, it's hard to understand the politics. Even know the history, sometimes it's hard. But if you don't know the history, it's almost impossible to realize about the politics. Yeah.
So this is very interesting because, as you know, my professional work, in addition to hosting the show, is actually in information warfare and everything related to that, and discrediting disinformation and so forth. Although disinformation is not the only way information warfare is fought, it's certainly a major weapon. So I'm curious to learn more about this association and how do its various members are involved. Are they all Canadian or are they international?
It's international. I forgot to mention that it's all over the world.
Mhm.
Because from other, it's Ukraine, it's Canada, United States, Germany, Australia, Italy, Germany, other countries, Poland. Yeah,
Well, that's definitely something that I am very interested in potentially getting involved more, because in our offsite conversation you mentioned some figures, and although I haven't had the dubious pleasure of dealing with them personally, those names are painfully familiar to me, and they are run very much in the same circles and promote the same sort of nonsense in Canada and beyond.
absolutely. Yeah, because it's another story. I have one of the members of the HPS recently, and she wrote a very interesting article. I would say that it's a small book because it's important. She investigated the ties, and she called it group of HIMCA. HIMCA is American Canadian historians who start the spreading the rumors and falsifications about the Ukrainian nationalists. And he is the one who let's say legitimize some of the Soviet fakes, like fake biography of Stetsko, fake conference, and other documents that I analyzing in my books. He and his group try to convince that it's authentic documents, so it's not the fake created in KGB. It's interesting enough that I have the documents from the KGB. Did you know the name of John Paul Himka? Historian? No.
Just heard in passing, but I'm not familiar with anything
Okay.
related to that.
Okay, yeah. It's the whole story is the chain, because the historians create the background, and then journalists and bloggers just pointing fingers. So this prominent historian said that all Ukrainian nationalists, they anti-Semitics, and they participated in Shoah. So if so, it's true. And for them, evidence is not working. But most important, they just using these fakes from the Soviet Union, they try to convince people who has no idea about it, and they trust. So if it's famous name, yeah, so it's so be true. It's the problem. So our association tried to fight.
That's quite amazing. And does it have a website that you can share for our audience?
We're working, but we already have the Facebook page for association, and soon will be available the Substack letter, so people can know and can read the materials. And we try to keep for the beginning 3 languages. It's actually that I try to write my materials in 3 languages, because I know lots of people who is living in the West, they don't possess such deep knowledge of Ukrainian and Russian, or. So for them it's English. Some Jewish people in Israel don't have the Ukrainians, Ukrainian language, and some Ukrainians, of course, they don't know English or Russian, so it's important. 3 languages, maybe more in the future, but 3 languages is very important. Also, I have my personal group. They call History and Learned Lessons in Facebook, and now it has audience about 15,000 followers. As long as, and also my personal blog and live journal that I put in some of my materials there.
Yeah, it would be great if you could share that information here for anyone who wants to join or follow, and also websites where we can, where anyone can, who is interested can purchase your books.
Yeah, I will be, yes, I will be sharing, because the book in Ukrainians available through the bookstores in United States and Canada, in Ukraine by itself, because Ukraine shipping to Europe. And some books also available in Amazon, so people can browse my name, Alik Gomelsky, can find in Amazon, or look for some interviews that they give and participated in panels, conferences, and other materials. And live journal, it's we can put after in the comments the link to my live journal as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for this absolutely fascinating material. I have a feeling there's we are barely scratching the surface here. I'm very excited to dig more into your work and the archives that you mentioned. This is I think we will probably have many more conversations in the future, because
Of course. This Abraham Shifrin, just a few pictures I want to show. It's a picture of Abraham Shifrin by the Mon-Friday, Western Wall. And this is some amazing work that has been done by association. This is, if you can see, Rabbi, same document that I show you today. It was meeting with the Ukrainians in Toronto. And this is chief rabbi of Ukraine. Left side, and beside him left, it's me, and another Jew, his son-in-law, that he went with him to Canada, and it was amazing. And Rabbi was very amazed how Ukrainians in Canada and in Toronto praise him and having him. So it's amazing.
Wow, beautiful. That reminds me of a phrase my friend who himself fell victim to the smear campaign under Romer has said, "Don't believe everything you think. People think they have a lot of information. They think they know everything, but in reality, a lot of what people genuinely believe is just false information that was fed to them from various sources, and they didn't even know that it was fed to them. They just absorbed it, and it became ingrained in their minds, entrenched, until it becomes part of how they think on a daily basis. But this is a good reminder every day to question your own assumptions, to question what you think you know."
Absolutely, because like I learned from my experience, you know that you don't know everything, and it's always something that you can find and you can discover. So I always keep my mind open and looking for the inconvenient truth, because it's very important point that maybe it's not convenient, but like one rabbi said, if you love Jew, tell him the truth. It's maybe make them inconvenient and pain, but it will save them. So it's very important to understand your enemy and your friends and not mess them up.
Absolutely, could not agree more, especially today when getting confused seems to be easier than ever with all the tools to amplify all this fake news and disinformation. that haven't been even available decades ago.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for joining. Thank you for your time. This was absolutely fascinating. I'm very excited to kind of dig and explore all these subjects and share more with our audience. And I hope that they follow up and reach out and ask questions and use this as a learning opportunity and kind of start questioning what they have heard and seen elsewhere. For
Yeah.
those watching, this was, of course, the Washington Outsider Report on the Coalition Radio, and Alik Gomelsky. Make sure to check out his books, his works, his other writings and presentations, and start thinking about what he has had to say. Some of it may be surprising, new, and very much paradigm shifting, but it's worth exploring, it's worth thinking about, and it's certainly worth asking more questions. And of course, we'll be back next week at our usual time, 9 p.m. Tuesday. Thanks to everyone who joined us, and have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.